serve you all our days, ever rejoice to sing your praise, as we together your wisdom seek. Charge us with truth whene'er we speak. Lord, may we ever know your will. Come to us when our hearts are still, as we your guidance with joy receive. May we as one your bliss achieve, as we your guidance with joy receive. May we as one your bliss achieve.
This week's reading from Rays of the One Light by Swami Kriyananda is entitled, The Law is Perfected in Love. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. John, chapter 1, we read, The law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. Grace means the power to rise spiritually. Truth means the experience of divine realities, not the application in the outer world of that inner experience. Divine love is the soul's experience of oneness with God. Kindness is the human manifestation of that love. Grace is deeper than mere kindness. Wisdom is a divine experience. Justice to all is a human law, though divinely inspired. It follows as a consequence of the experience of wisdom. Truth goes deeper than mere justice. While following the law, we should strive always to trace it back to its origins in the vision of God. Therefore, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita urges the devotee not to be satisfied with spiritual precepts alone, but to go beyond them to the direct inner experience of truth. In the 18th chapter of that great scripture, he says, Nay, but once more take my last word, my utmost meaning have. Precious thou art to me, right well beloved. Listen, I tell thee for thy comfort this. Give me thy heart. Adore me, serve me, cling in faith and love and reverence to me. So shalt thou come to me. I promise true, for thou art sweet to me. And let go those rights and writ duties. Fly to me alone. Make me thy single refuge. I will free thy soul from all its sins. Be of good cheer. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. And from Whispers from Eternity, Paramhansa Yogananda's Book of Prayer Poems. Make me silent, that I may eloquently converse with Thee. Wandering through forests of incessant searching, I arrived at the mystery door which conceals Thy presence. I knocked loudly on this door of silence with persistent blows of faith. At last the door opened, and I beheld Thee resting on Thy altar of glorious visions. I stood with restless gaze, waiting for Thee to speak. Thy creation-making voice was inaudible. At last a deep stillness stole over me and taught me in whispers the language of angels. With the lisping voice of my newborn freedom, I tried to speak. Suddenly the lights in Thy temple wrote brilliantly in letters of light. In my little chamber of quietness I am ever at rest. I never speak now, but with the voice of silence. Through my silence, O divine lover, converse Thou eloquently with me. This subject, the law is perfected in love, is really, even the statement alone is something to just keep in mind forever. Because so often we can feel bound by outer laws, inner laws, and our sense of what we have fulfilled or not fulfilled. And what we have done correctly, we get rewarded for, we hope, and what we have done incorrectly, we get punished for, we're sure. And so it reminds me of a story of a man who came before a judge, and the judge says, "How do you plead?" Meaning guilty or not guilty. And the man said, "Your Honor, I plead for mercy." And it's so true that on the spiritual path especially, we can get caught up in whether we have fulfilled the law or broken the law. In the Bible, this concept of Moses brought the law, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ, it says. And remember that that Paramahansa Yogananda said, "Pray to God as your divine mother," because the mother is closer than the father. And there's a strong sense of God as Father, especially in the Christian world and in the Western world. But remember, Jesus said to think of God as your Father. That was bringing him closer, actually, than the previous concept of God with the law, which was God was a judge. He wasn't your father. He wasn't related to you at all. He could care less. You either broke the law, in compliance, out of compliance. That was it. And then you get the punishment like everybody else next. There's no sense of personal connection. That's why Jesus was saying God isn't an impersonal judge. He's your own father. Would your own father just cast you away for a mistake that you'd made? Reminds me of Yoganandaji was talking to a man who was a fundamentalist Christian. And he was saying that, we're all sinners and we're all going straight to hell to burn for all the mistakes that we've made. And Yogananda was listening to him for a while, and then the conversation came around to the subject of his son, the man's son. And the man said, "My son just gives me terrible trouble." And Yoganandaji said, "Yes, I know that he does." He said, "He's always drinking and getting into trouble." And Yoganandaji said, "Well, I have a solution for you. Do you have a very large oven?" And the man said, "Yeah, what do you suggest?" No, I'm just saying, do you have a large oven? "Yes." "Okay, now do you have a bunch of rope?" He said, "Now wait a second. No, I'm just asking. It's easy. No, don't worry. Do you have a bunch of rope?" And he said, "Well, yeah." He said, "Okay, so the next time your son comes home late, drunk, wait for him, and when he comes in the house, tie him up with rope and throw him in the oven." And the man said, "What are you saying, my own child? How dare you?" And Master said, "You see? If you wouldn't do that to your own son, how can you think that the Heavenly Father would ever do something like that to you? Otherwise, are we more virtuous, more kind, more forgiving than God? How can it be? How can it be?" And we can laugh, but remember, when in our minds we feel, "Yes, but I'm so bad, and I must be among the worst on earth because I, whatever it is, I interrupted somebody, or I ate too much idlis or something, and I was greedy." All the ridiculous things that we can judge ourselves so harshly for. God isn't saying that. In fact, Master said, love God, don't be afraid of God. Fear, when we're afraid of God or when we feel guilty, it's actually our way of pulling away. It's our way of keeping him at a distance. We think God is so far away because we're so bad, he doesn't want to bother coming near us because he can't stand the smell. And it's not that at all, but that's us pushing him away because we're closing our hearts. We're turning away from that ray of grace. We're saying, "I know you couldn't love me, so I'll close my heart." It's such a funny paradox. So the simple solution is don't do that. It's not necessarily easy to do, but this is what we have to just stop that thought when it comes. Just say, "I know God will always forgive me." And there isn't really even a question of forgiveness. Swamiji said, God has gone to a lot of trouble to make this world, fill this world with traps. So he digs this huge pit and then covers it up with a little bit of straw and then puts a little sign on the other side of it that says, free dosa. And so then what happens? We go right into the pit. And Master Swamiji said, why would he get mad when we fall into the very traps that he's put there? He knows that they're traps. He knows. He's wanting us to say, read the fine print where it says free dosa over there. So he's saying, this is how you'll learn. And so why would he get mad when we fall for his tricks? He might even be happy for a moment. Got another one. Okay. I don't know. I don't think he's happy, but he's certainly not angry. And he might say, that dosa trick works every time. And so we should just feel like, okay, Divine Mother, you got me again. Someone was saying they had an awkward experience where they had given something to someone. Someone was asking for money on the street, and they said, well, I don't have money, but I can give you some food. And the person said, I don't want food, and took and threw the food into the dustbin. And my friend, the person was so shocked, just kind of like, she was partly just hurt that here she gave something and it was so rejected, but also just to see someone's sheer level of anger and doing something basically violent like that, it just stayed with her, and she was having a hard time calming down, and we could all understand that. But we were saying, there's many ways to think about it and kind of deal with it, and we can look at ourselves and all that, but you can also think of it as Divine Mother. She goes down and she says, okay, there's Vineet, he's coming around here. And just puts on the mask and then just goes, bah! And then we kind of go, ah! And then she says, gotcha. She just every now and then just likes to have a little fun, and she has a funny sense of humor, but she will say, boo, and see if we get scared. And so if we do get scared, then later we can say, not to the food throwing person, but to her we can just say, you got me, okay, I was getting caught up in the thing and you shocked me out, all right, ha, I'll get you next time, and then just laugh it off, if you can do that sincerely. If we can't do it sincerely, my heart hurts too much, no, this was unfair, then we have to do what we can do sincerely with that feeling. Now, speaking of unfair, the law is perfected in love. And we can say, yes, that's the easy way to get out of it. But then out of, the law, if I just say, but I'm sorry, like that little boy who was growing up at Ananda village, and his mother would always play Swamiji's recording of Shri Ram, Jai Ram Om, and he loved to listen to it, and then he did something one day wrong, and his mother started yelling at him and saying, you should not do that, and he said, Shri Ram, Jai Ram. And just saying, maybe that'll work. Maybe that will help me get off the hook. And so we can say that there are ways to get out of this. But on the other hand, even in our own teachings, we know that there is the law of karma. And so whatever energy we put out comes back to us. And it's hard to understand that, but if we are bound by the laws of karma, just because we love or because we're nice, then maybe we get less karma? How does that work? Because the law is the law, after all. And if you drop a rubber ball and it bounces, and you drop a wooden ball and it hits the ground, you don't say, well, which one of you is a nice ball? Were you good today to your ball sister and ball brother? Then you won't hit the ground or you won't fall as quickly according to gravity. No, you can't get around the law. It's just the way it is. There is that thought, and in fact it's true. But yet even Jesus said to one who, because one of the people who came to him had done a lot of wrong things in her life, and he accepted her. And anyway, and some people were, sort of critical of this. How can you take such a person? And he said, she has great love, and to one who loves much, much is forgiven. And so he didn't say she was pure enough, or she didn't mean it, or she's done other things to make up for it. To one who loves much, much is forgiven. And that's related to karmic law. Because what can we be forgiven of? If we hurt somebody's feelings and then they hold it against us, let me put it a different way. If somebody hurts us and we're holding it against them and then finally we say, I forgive you. Now, there is an element, there is a level of human interaction where yes, forgiveness is there. But when someone was asking Swamiji, how do I forgive? He said, I don't really know. Because if somebody has wronged us, that's their problem. And if we're really attached to it and holding on to it, that's our problem. It happened. And so why don't we find a way instead to say, okay, Divine Mother, let me work it out with you, rather than making such an effort to say, I forgive you, but don't do it again. Just like that happened to me once. I was in line at the airport at a counter to get some food, and I had my backpack and I took it off to get my wallet or something. And I didn't notice anything happening when I swung my backpack off. But then, out of the sort of side of my eye, I felt this person becoming icy, cold, and full of spikes. And I wondered now, why would she feel that way? And so I turned to her and I said, I'm sorry, did I hit you with my backpack? If I did, I didn't mean to, I'm so sorry. She said, that's fine. No problem. And then I turned away and then she grabbed my arm and said, but don't do it again. Okay, I can imagine what happened. So, this concept of forgiveness, what we really have to be forgiven of is our karma. In other words, that's really what we are in debt to. That's really what we have put out. And that's what can be cleared. Just like a financial debt can be forgiven, karmic debts can be forgiven. But how? Well, the way karma works is that when we put out an action and we are off-center, so we are, our goal is to be in our center. But to the degree that we are off-center, so when we put out an action, it generates karma. So how are we off-center? Because we do it with desire. I want this. I mean to do this, versus I sort of accidentally did it. That doesn't have the same karma. Or we're centered and just say, this feels right to do. But when we're off balance, then when we put out energy, we do an action, whatever it is, we say something unkind or we punch someone in the face metaphorically, then the energy goes out this way, a balancing energy, an opposite energy, goes off in this direction. You can say, where is it coming from? No, it's not. I don't mean literally. But we're going this way, so the energy goes that way. And it comes around like a big boomerang, and then finally hits us to knock us back on center again. That's all it does. The energy that we put out was off in this direction, so it comes around to cancel that out and to bring us back to center. And once we have done that action, once that boomerang has been thrown off of us, there is nothing that can be done to stop it. It is going and it is coming back. In that sense, it is permanent. There's nothing we can do to change the boomerang once we look, excuse me, Vanga? No, it's gone. And it's coming, it's gonna Vanga, it's coming back. But not necessarily the way we want. And yet, if it's going to knock us back onto center, but in the meantime, we become centered ourselves by meditation, by realizing we did wrong, by whatever other situations, by trying to balance the energy ourselves, then when it comes to hit us, it doesn't have to push us very far because we're already centered. If we're way out here, there's a lot of energy that has to come. But if we're already centered, dink, nothing happens. As Swamiji said, if you punch someone in the jaw and then you generate the karma to have your jaw punched back in return, but in the meantime you become so strong through all your exercise and everything, by the time that punch in the jaw comes, you'll say, what was that? Did a feather brush my jaw? And it's just a sweet thought that just not the, but anyway, never mind. But you know what I mean. We get so strong that this karmic impact is much less. There was a boy at Mount Washington who was a disciple of Master, and he had an accident and he lost a finger in the accident. And everyone was sad for him, but he said it would have been much worse if Master hadn't been there. I don't think Master was there present, but he knew that Master had protected him from a much worse karma. And we saw that a lot, and we read about it in the path in Master's life, how people, at the construction site there was a huge beam that had fallen straight down and was going towards one of the disciples, and the foreman saw the beam stop and then go up and fall the other way. And meanwhile, the disciple had no idea what was happening, just doodling along. And that's what happens to us all the time. Divine Mother is like we're like little kids walking across the street. She's stopping the auto rickshaw and moving the cow out of the way. And we're just like, gosh, why is life so hard? And so there were miracles like that at Ananda too. Seva, many of you know, she was one of the first members of Ananda very early on, and a friend and supporter of Swamiji. And this was in the 70s, I think. She was near an engine, motor engine. I'm not sure under what situation it was, but someone then poured gasoline into the engine while it was running and open, and suddenly and then he left, and then it burst into flames. She was right next to it, and her whole face was on fire. And she called out, "Jim, could you help me?" And so just like that. And so he came around the corner and he saw, oh my God, threw her on the ground, and I don't know how they put it out, but her face was completely burned. She was in the hospital, and it was just amazing. She came out of the hospital, she has a little scar right here. There was no damage to her face at all. And she said the whole time it happened, she didn't feel any pain. Now talk about, protection, and also a dramatic way of burning off a lot of karma, literally, but you're okay because you have that protection. That protection comes from what you do in the meantime to strengthen yourself and center yourself so all the boomerangs can come back and you, fine, no problem, I'm all right. But it also comes from asking the gurus for their protection. I live in the fortress of God's inner presence, as we said in the affirmation. Nothing and no one can break through these walls and harm me. I live in the fortress of God's inner presence. We hang on to that. And you see, it's not that love cheats the law, it's that love is a higher law. That's why this explanation of if in love you center yourself and connect yourself to God, you draw a greater protection so that the blows that come, they don't have to be so hard. It's like you walk out in the rain. If we walk out during monsoon and say, gosh, I'm getting so wet, this is so sad. And that's true, but there is a solution. Just get an umbrella, and then you get a little wet, but still not much compared to before. So we should reach for that protection. We should expect that protection. We should ask God and feel God's protection. Invite Him in, not say, well, why is He doing this to me? Or He's ignoring me because I've ignored Him, or whatever those thoughts we have, especially out of fear or self-doubt, that push Him away. That's the thing that keeps Him away. It's us driving Him out. As Master said to one disciple when she asked, why don't I feel you or see you or connect with you the way the others do? He said, if you shut me out, how can I come in? He wasn't saying I don't want to come in. He's saying I do want to come in, but I won't intrude. God will not intrude. He has all the power of the universe, but He won't come into our hearts uninvited. In fact, He's given us the freedom, as Master said, to either seek Him or reject Him. That's really the only freedom we actually have. And so let us seek Him more and more. Let's embrace that sense of protection. Let's feel that, God, you're with me. It doesn't matter naughty or good, doesn't matter whatever I've done. And remember too, as Sri Yukteswarji said, that forget the past. The vanished lives of all men are dark with many shames. Human conduct is ever unreliable until anchored in the infinite. Everything in future will improve if you're making a spiritual effort now. If we find ourselves in a boat that's filled with water, just start bailing the water out. It doesn't matter how the water got there, doesn't matter how much we put it in there, doesn't matter what's going to happen next. We just start bailing, dumping the water out. And so we do that also through Kriya. The practice of Kriya is extremely effective at giving us this protection, because we can't always know this is the right attitude in this situation. Whenever that happens, okay, somebody came out and yelled at me and insulted me and now I feel hurt. Okay, let me look at page 67. Okay, during insults to father, insults to mother, insults from father, which one is oh, okay, there's no handbook. We can't figure it all out mentally and have the perfect response already pre-programmed, or have the whole situation around us controlled so that, okay, you speak nicely, and you better not speak at all. And, we can't do it. We can't do it. But if we practice our meditation, if we practice Kriya, we start burning off some of this karma also. So that way, it's sort of like you do get to knock the boomerang out of midair. If you burn up the seed of karma before it can manifest, then you've gotten rid of it. Because the seed of karma is really a stored up energy. It's a potential energy. And if you can find a way to dissipate that energy, which we do in meditation and especially Kriya, then it takes just as much effort, it consumes just as much energy, but in a focused, centered way, and then poof, then it's gone. And then we don't have to live through the consequences that way. We did the work. We paid the debt in meditation. So in other words, there's no way out of the debt, but there's easier ways to pay it. And that's why, again, remember, when you do your meditation, do it with love. It doesn't say the law is perfected in meditation. People can get very rigid about meditation, or too much meditation builds the ego. But if we just with love offer ourselves, I'm meditating as an act of devotion. I'm meditating, why? Why do we meditate? To become one with God. Why do we take Kriya initiation? To become one with God, not to have Kriya, not even to practice Kriya. That's like getting a beautiful new car and then just sitting in it and never going anywhere. The car, though it's nice to sit in for a day or two, after a while you have got places to go. And in this case, the Kriya car takes you to God. So let's get in and go. And so, really feel in this next week that God is with you. Try to catch those thoughts that say, I'm afraid, or I doubt myself, or why did I do that again, or why did they do that again, or whatever. How can we see difficulties as proof of God's love for us, as it was saying in the prayer that we did? That everything comes from thy hand. Remember that these difficulties also, if they bring up stuff in us, a reaction, a hurt, that is something that we have to heal. As Sri Yukteswar said, diseased parts recoil even from the mildest touch. So when we find ourselves recoiling, hey, that hurt my feelings, then we say, okay, that means there's some hurt in me that needs healing. It doesn't make what the other person did right. It doesn't mean we deserved it or anything. But really, that's their problem. Their ledger of debts and credits is held by God, not by us. And as is ours, held by God, not by anyone else. And so we say, as Swamiji says, God is trying to heal us through this difficult experience. And His love is revealed in His very effort to try to heal us. You see, He's saying, I love you and I want you to grow. Why? Because you want to grow. And because it will make you happier. Who doesn't want to be happy? We all do. And so He's saying, this is what it will take. And what do, we often think in response, at least speaking personally, not that. That will not make me happy. That will make me unhappy. And Master said it too. He said that, God is so funny because just the very thing that we don't want, that's what happens to us. And yet, very often we find that there is a silver lining that actually, in some ways, it can turn out to be the best thing that ever happened. And so, there was a situation where I was teaching corporate workshops based on these teachings with Haridas Ji, traveling around India. And we had done a workshop for a company. And I said to the person, Now, please tell when they send the check for it, have them send it not to the address on the letterhead, which was just some, office address that we never went to, but to my personal address. He said yes. And so then when I sent the invoice, I wrote, please send the check to not the address there, but this address. And I imagine they read it and said yes. And so what happened? When they called, they said, we've sent the check and we've sent it to the office address. And so I just said, and it was frustrating, and there was a problem with it going there and so on. It was the office of the accountant, and the accountant and I were having a disagreement at the moment. And so I thought the last thing I need is for the accountant to say, now I have this check of yours. And so, is it crossed? If it's not crossed, I can just change the name and put my name on there. So anyway, I just didn't want, I knew, okay, everything is supposedly a blessing in disguise. God, everything that you give is positive, and it seems bad, but it's actually good. And then I said, I dare you to show me how this is good. I couldn't envision how there was any way it could even be neutral. Oh, isn't it nice it went to the wrong office of the horrible person? And not a horrible person, but at the moment I might have thought that. And so it just like, I was a little bold in saying, I dare you to, and no lightning bolt came out in response, but I did. I just said, there's no way this can be a good thing. This breaks the pattern. It disproves the law. So then I just went about my day kind of, wondering, okay, well, I'm going to have to call the accountant, or he's going to call me and say, I got something of yours. Want to come visit? And so I then got a call from the client. In fact, Haridasji and I were out visiting another client, doing a sales call, and I got a call from the original client saying, the check came back because the office that was sent to had been sealed by the government. So apparently I wasn't the only one the accountant was having a problem with. And so I said, oh, wow, what can we do? He said, well, I have it right here. Do you want to just come and get it? And so I don't know if you've ever been in sales or whatever, but any time you can go and see the client ever for any reason is thrilling. Especially if you don't have to generate. If he says, come, yes, we would love to come. And so we came, and we were nearby, and we just drove over, and we got the check. And then he said, we were so happy with the workshop you did. People are still talking about it. I would like to recommend you to other offices of the company in other cities in India. And in fact, I know my counterparts, heads of HR in these other companies, and I'll just call them for you. I mean, sometimes people will give you a recommendation or they'll give you a contact, but they won't often call the person and say, listen, you've got to hire these people. And so a number of other workshops came out of that one experience, all because that check went to the wrong place, then came back, and then we went there. And that's not the end of the story, because that would be thrilling, and it would be so nice that, oh yes, and then we got all these more workshops and so on, and thank you, God. That would be enough. That would have been enough to satisfy me. But later, that same man called me up one day, because we had been talking, especially because of all these ongoing workshops and referrals and so on, and he said, I was reading this autobiography of a yogi, and what is this Kriya Yoga? There's this 30 seconds of Kriya gives 1 year of growth. How do I get that? And so he said, well, why don't you come and talk about it? And so he started taking the classes, and he took Kriya, and he's a part of Ananda's family now. And so that, I think, was the deeper reason God, you may have sent the check to the wrong place. So trust that when things are difficult, the story isn't over yet. And see not only whether it has a dramatic, happy, surprise ending, or whether we just feel after a certain point, God, no matter what happens, I always feel you in my heart. I know it's all coming from you. I love you just the same, and all I want is to be free in this lifetime. God bless you.